Hi, my name is Grant Linsell. I'm the Dean of Arts and Cultural Programs here at Rio Hondo College. Welcome. Before we get to our artist talk and question and answer period, we're going to do a short slideshow of all of the pieces in tonight's show. This will last approximately 5 minutes. Thank you.
Welcome to Rio Hondo College, guys. I'm very fortunate to have Joel Nakamura here with us today. He's our artist, and it's such a pleasure because for those of you who are seeing this online and don't know, Joel was our show that was supposed to happen right at the beginning of the pandemic. And it was really heartbreaking because I've always loved his work and was so excited that he agreed to do the show and was flying down from Santa Fe. And then the pandemic really sort of flared up, and Joe was kind enough to postpone because I really wanted the show to be live so we could be here together and celebrate it and have our students at Rio Hondo really get the experience of what his work is about in person. And so for me, as the gallery director, that was really, really important. And I'd like to thank my staff who really sort of supported me in that and pushed to make all this happen. You know, Abby, Wendy, Grant, our dean, and actually the president of the university was really great about letting us do this during these times. So I'm really thrilled. Thank you all for coming. And on that note, I'd like to introduce our fantastic artist, Gerald Nakamura.
Thank you for being here, and I'd like to start saying that I did go to school here starting when I was a junior in high school. I'd come up here for some night classes to try to get a little bit more expansion of art. And my favorite teacher, Dale Harvey, is here tonight. And so he kind of introduced me to the whole concept of illustration and where we could go. And he would say, you know, I'd go, I want to do Roger Dean. He goes, no, Roger Dean. We'll look at some other people like Arthur Rackham, Maxwell Parrish. And so it kind of expanded what my definition of illustration was, because I had my Yes album covers, and they put them around and trip out on those. And so that, and my uncle was a car designer, and he came into my room one day and saw album covers everywhere and said, you know, there's people that do that for a living. I said, really? He goes, yeah, they're called illustrators. And I went, oh. So that kind of opened up my mind for a career path that I thought that's what I should do. And then a couple of guys back here I went to Art Center with, John and Greg, and then Robert, one of my students from Art Center, is here. And they've all gone on to have stellar careers of their own. So this collection of work is all mainly personal work. And so I got into working on metal influence from Santa Fe and the Spanish colonial tin works. And when I wanted to do some more modern looking work, I thought, you know, if I could have a fabricator make a canvas out of metal, then I would paint on that. I thought that would be kind of a cool look. So I thought this would be a nice way to have Robert do an installation. And I love what you did with it. And so these things are pretty much indestructible. And
Gonna spray it between them now.
so yeah, they're a combination of acrylic and enamel paint. On some of the like flatter colors are enamel paint. And then I used to do a lot of commercial art using an airbrush, doing Coke cans and things like that. And I thought, I never want to use this thing again. But then, so I put it away for many, many years. And then I had a client that actually wanted me to have some kind of gradation in a background, and they wanted the original art to have that gradation. So I had to get another airbrush again. I thought, oh man. And then once I finished that project, I started playing around with it, just having fun with it. And it actually was really fun to use again, that I wasn't, you know, airbrushing Coke cans and tacos and things like that. So this work represents, you know, 3 or 4 different exhibitions. These are the remnant pieces, or pieces I kept from that. And so they represent everything from Japanese pop to dream catchers and just weird creatures from the imagination. And so, do you guys have any questions?
There's no names on them, how do we know what they are?
Well,
Make it roll.
We do have a list, and there's a list right out there, and it's sort of in order. So
Oh,
as opposed to having tags, we chose in this case to do a list. and it goes in order, so you can take the list and you'll see each title and all that information, so that is there for you.
So let's talk about this wall. This is kind of the octopus wall. So we have lava lamp octopus, and this is watermelon octopus, and this is blue octopus, and then artichoke octopus. And so the artichoke octopus kind of came about from biology. There's a theory of convergent evolution that entities that may live next to each other may take on characteristics of the other, even though they're not a related species. So that's a theme I like to play with a lot, called convergent evolution. It gets pretty bizarre, you know, and but that's where that came from. And that's again from biology here at Rio Hondo.
Now, I noticed in a lot of your work that you tend to hide your images. What's the inspiration behind that? I noticed, like, when we look at the yellow piece back there with the Godzilla, Grant's probably pulling it up on the back wall. For those of you who know Joel, he's an Aikido master and teaches Aikido. That, like, I noticed that all of a sudden you start noticing, oh yeah, there's little Aikido guys in the side corner. And so as I get to know the work better, I keep on finding more sort of little gems in the piece.
But yeah, I always like to hide little things. So the kind of doodling is kind of influenced from tribal peoples, Aborigines, artists like Keith Haring that, you know, had a narrative that would go on as doodles in the background. So I don't actually pre-plan those. I just kind of do them and make them up as I go. I did have a commercial client called Merck. They're a pharmaceutical company, and I did the branding art for migraine headache medicine. And they had an attorney that had to look at my sketches to make sure I wasn't hiding penises and things like that. And, so they had this guy, an attorney, have to sign off on my work. And so I finally had one of the art directors give me a picture of that guy. And so I started hiding his face into the background. And I said, okay, I don't need to see these anymore. And so that could have been a bad situation, but I decided to use humor to try to get him to back off on trying to micromanage me, you know. So that's Aikido in action, pretty much.
Now, I love the response from our students, because for me, a lot of these cross so many of the lines that when we talk about art, painting, illustration, sort of into little graphic design, animation, sort of. And so the students really have gotten this wonderful kind of sort of questioning, what is art? So for you, where do you find these sort of, where do they fall in for you?
Most of my influences are from folk art and tribal peoples. And so I kind of always been drawn to that kind of work, collected it, have books about it. And so that's kind of where I draw a lot of my inspiration from. So this wall over here is kind of Japanese influence wall. So the two that have the tories or the arch gateways, that's supposed to be an open gateway that you can invite the kami or the gods to come through the gate and into your life. And then the samurai cutting off heads. So I call that corporate head hunters. And then the yellow one is samurai worm. And then the middle one is actually an Aikido move. So that's called Morotedori Kokyuho. And so I wanted Ultraman, who is a Japanese superhero, doing the Aikido rather than guys in gis and kimonos and stuff. I thought that would be more fun. And so I used that type of art to brand my own Aikido school with fun images. And that's actually been the draw for a lot of people who have come into my dojo instead of another one, is that we have fun artwork associated with us. Kaiju. So yeah, and I'm called Kaiju Aikido Club, which monsters like Godzilla. He's like King Kaiju. So Godzilla has always been kind of a personal totem to me. ever since I first saw him in a movie. And so he ends up in a lot of images. So there's a Kabuki Godzilla, so he's got his Kabuki makeup and he's part of a Zen garden as a rock. So there's little stories behind all these paintings that you guys are interested to hear about any of that. The painting down there, it's like a blue dog, like a pug that has spider legs. So that's called the barking spider. And so when I was in Texas, there was a guy that ripped a fart. And he said, "Oh, the damn barking spiders." And so I thought that was hilarious. I thought I got to do that as the image. So sometimes things I hear that I think are funny become paintings. There was a lady in Santa Fe that I overheard talking about how her kid had a pet praying mantis and they were vegetarians and they wanted the praying mantis to be a vegetarian too. And so that inspired a few paintings and I thought, well, that probably isn't going to turn out too well for the praying mantis. But so the praying mantis is an insect I think is kind of a fascinating bug, so it's a good subject matter to paint.
Now, also, we're very fortunate to have 3 brand new pieces that literally just came in right before the show. And there's a little triptych back there, and they're really beautiful gems, and it's really your pandemic series. Can you talk about how the work changed a little bit and how the pandemic affected you as an artist and your life?
Well, those of you that are artists, you know that social distancing is our life anyway. And so that was nothing new to me. You know, you're at home, you paint, and you don't go anywhere. And so I had lots of time just to be home and painting. So I painted a lot during the pandemic. And so there's 3 I thought were kind of funny. One's kind of telling this dog that's kind of a house to stay at home, because that's when we had to stay at home. And then I have a dog walking his pet COVID around because he can't ever get rid of him, and he's got a little face helmet on. And it seems like that's kind of the way it is, that maybe it's going to mutate to something else, but we may never get rid of it. And then the other piece is about kind of this weird Sasquatch creature that lives in a different dimension, and that was trying a different style of using gradations and just flat graphics. So those were just mainly experiments to see. And that's kind of what I like to do, is experiment all the time, because I get bored of painting the way I always paint, and I can always go back to that, but I want to try different things, different ways to approach imagery.
Now, knowing your work a little bit, you're award-winning, you wrote a children's book that's award-winning, you're a graphic designer, you're an artist. How do you balance that? How do you find that your artwork relates to each of the fields that you're working in?
Well, it's never been a plan. It just kind of happens where somebody wants me to expand what I can do for this a certain project. I'm not a graphic designer, and I'm horrible at that. So I don't know how to use any of those programs. So I don't really involve myself too much in graphic design, but I do logos and things that are image related. And the work kind of finds me by itself and makes me segue to a different way of approaching it. And so right now I'm really busy with commercial art without trying to be. I think people have cycled through the kind of digital realism, and now they're kind of not intrigued with that look anymore, and now they want something a little more primitive or a little more hand-done or a little bit more evidence of an artist happening. And so people have sought me out again to do projects, which is kind of fun, that I'm working without having to go out looking for it. So that's a cool thing.
Fantastic. We're getting close. If there's any questions, would anybody?
Can you talk a little bit about your palette and why you use lot of primary colors and a lot of bold colors. Can you talk a little bit about why you do what you do there?
Back when we were in illustration, we found that if you had muted colors, by the time it went through the generations to actually get printed, that the color reduced by maybe 30 or 40%. So if you could have screamy color from the very start, by the time it went through different reproductive processes, you actually got something closer to what you really wanted. And so that's kind of where this came from. It's out of the commercial art, to not be afraid of color and to use it boldly. And, you know, a lot of times it's straight out of the tube because I'm lazy.
After seeing all your work, that's not even an issue. Any other questions? Okay, well, Joel will be here, and so please, Mako, ask questions. If you're a little shy, please come up. Please enjoy the show. We're so thrilled to have you. We're just thrilled that we're back open again. So thank you all for coming out, and I'd like to thank my staff for making this happen. Enjoy the night.
You guys did a great job.